Okay. So good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you alive and well after yesterday. I'm joking. It was a long day, and also we had some nice artistic pieces to explore, and also Vilnius city to explore. But today we start our last session, where we also have a discussion at the end. It's a pleasure to ask Alejandro to give his presentation, and welcome.
Thank you. Well, time-wise, we have a. Should I try to get it at 10:30?
Like 30-ish minutes, but take your time.
Compensate the 15 academic minutes. Good morning. So I am Alejandro Olarte from the Sibelius Academy. First of all, I want to present my apologies for joining so late the conference. I think I missed quite a bit of your presentations, where I could think there are a lot of resonance points and opportunities to develop on the topic. But I think we can fix that on the discussion and probably on the coffee breaks. I want to thank the committee and Professor Mantautas and Dr. Ramunė for the invitation. I'm very glad to still be able to present my topic. So my topic is called From Ecstasy to Trance through Live Electronic Music. And this is something that I have been working on for several years. And some of you may be familiar with the electroacoustic music performance or electronic performance. I think that the term is still being under elaboration. I also call sonic performance. And just to have a context, is what I'm working on is on the in music made with electroacoustic means on a stage, as opposed to the electroacoustic music done on the studio. And by electroacoustic meaning all analog and digital and hybrid devices that are constituting a performance. So when I am a performer myself, but I also do a studio composition. So I'm very involved into the reflection of it and into the pedagogical aspects of the practice. Now, I wanted to start talking about the possibilities or the angles that I have identified, and where I'm going to present you a line of continuity between this ecstasy and trance that may happen in performance. And I will place myself somewhere there, showing you what I am thinking and what I am researching at the moment. And then by the end, I like to identify some of the aspects and some of the challenges and affordances that this analysis may bring. So when we talk about performance, I think we could took very different angles, considering, for example, the outcome of the performance, and in our case, it is musical and sonic, or sonic and musical, or phonic, or related to sound. So talking about physical processes, sound materials, the music and sonic qualities, considering the spectromorphological aspects of the outcome of the performance, which will inevitably lead us to talk about aesthetics and stylistic categories. However, there are other angles, such as the ecological perspective, considering materials and tools involved in how the performance is made. So we could analyze the performance by the instruments or the technological means, or the deployment of software, algorithms, and hardware that are involved into the performance, and analyze the performance from that perspective, as well as the impact and interaction with the environment and the relation to the non-human agents, such as the computer, but as well our environment as organic as well. We could take another perspective and talk about cultural contextualization, the intersubjectivity process, and considering the persons who is involved in the performance, when, where, for whom, either as a member of the audience or as a performer, and the sociological context where this happened, the place, the meaning, the motives, the ethics, and the reasons mobilized during, before, and after the performance. So that brings us to interesting issues such as the musicianship, or I don't know if there could be a word for sonicitianship, or and the identities of the persons involved in the performance. We could also talk about or analyze the performance from another angle, which is how it is to perform in terms of lived experience. And that will bring us to the phenomenological and microphenomenological approaches, considering the performance as an embodied experience. So I am stopping there. There could be other angles, but this last point is the one that I have been starting to consider and to focus, since most of the others are also quite interesting, and there is a lot of development going on in all the perspectives. But I have, as a performer, I have this strong motivation of reflecting on how it is to perform. So taking that angle, I have identified a line that keeps going and continues over an act. That what we could talk first is an engaged performance. So in an engaged performance, if we start to reflect from the body engagement in the performance, one can identify that there are some traditions, probably as old as the music practice performance it is, that take the body into places that could be even beyond the musical performance. And I think in both ends of this line that I'm presenting, there are intersections that are not clear-cut, but that cover with other domains of musical or of human artistic expression. So there is, at this end of the what I call engaged performance, when the body is fully onto the performance, there will be a moment where there is a shift towards more theatrical or performative act, one where the music starts to fade and the focus becomes the performing act. Now, as I say, the limits and the boundaries are not clear, and musicians have explored that into pushing the limit well beyond towards the borders of performance, but as well from the other side, so performance artists who integrate sound elements, who develop more and more musical and sonic skills and integrate from the other side. Now, how it is this engaged performance? I thought I have some keywords here: fully body engagement, euphoria, trance, uniqueness of the performer, the chosen one, Dionysius is overwhelming, possession and crisis, exorcism, extroverted space. And I thought we could probably look at some of the examples to different practices, and I like it to actually start from traditional musics. And this example here is a tarantella. You may be familiar with it. It's, in the South Italian folklore, there is this ritual when the music should exorcise someone who has been beaten by a spider, and in some cases the whole ritual has been elaborated. But just to bring some music, let's play a few fragments of it. I may scroll over it just to get some sounds going on. they are carrying the person towards the musicians. Forgive me to jump. I guess you can understand the point. The person is brought for recovery through music. Yes. Now, of course, here is it's not the musician who is living through the trance, but we could have put there is a long list there, as you can imagine, of cultures in which one the chosen one, the person going through the trance is part of the musician group, and it could be through the drum performance or to rhythmical performance or to melodic performance that state of trance is open and provide. So now moving towards the electroacoustic music performance, I'd like to share this one. Keep it there for now. But you identified the aspect that I was talking about at the beginning. Is if we talk about the body part, there is as well the cultural context and the ecological perspective and the sonic outcome. But if we focus on the body is pushed to an extreme. And now this is to somehow answer the questions of performing with electronic instruments. When we perform with electronic instruments, some things have changed from the acoustic performance, and it's one of them being the amplification, other being the sound synthesis, the synthesis aspect, other being the looping and the recording of sounds and the times that interlace. But so the question is different when I turn a knob in a machine, or if someone else turns the same knob in the machine. And I think the answer from this perspective is definitely yes, it is different, because the body can be completely engaged and even push. I think this performance starts to try pushing that boundary that I was talking about towards the performance act. So this was a park noise performance by the artist Punch Music in Japan. And there are a few other more that we could share into this Japan noise tradition culture that has become that was very popular from on the 80s and 90s, and got a strong influence in many noise driven musical cultures. I had also an example of tarekatawi, where the body, when we start to move slightly away from that extreme performance, but I'm not going to play now. I would like to reserve this for the time for comments. But now those keywords that you see on the screen, they make, you can identify the connection with what I'm talking about. So one moves into that line in progressive degrees, into taking some elements of it, for example, the rhythmical connection that we have seen, the typical DJ that needs to bring the beat, to communicate the embodiment of the music and the rhythm structures of the music in question, and also some waving or probably finger tapping, etc., until we can reach what I will call the state of the contemplative performance. So I'm putting that at the other end of the spectrum, as the let's do it like this, with also some keywords. Comes from it's an introverted space. There is a more focused attention or concentration. There are blurred roles between audience and performer. It's non-interventionist. We can talk about shared agency. We'll develop this in a moment. Minimal action and contemplation. Now this of course is also reflected in some traditional practice. I was very impressed when I saw this South Korean performance, and I noticed there was one of the speakers here was presenting already some South Korean music. But in this performance that I attended a few years ago, I was very impressed with one person that you will see. I will play a moment of it, and as well as skip, that is dressed differently. It's like the maître de cérémonie, the person who will mark a difference from the musicians with his dress, but still he has an instrument, but his instrument is played very rarely, and is only to mark the transitions and changes into the musical performance. So let's look at that example, and it's a long performance, but I will skip so that we get the point of this performer. Here it is, the person in green. Sorry, I missed the beginning.
느낄 수 있을 것입니다. 우리 다 같이 힘을 합쳐서 지금의 어려움을 이겨나가길 기원하겠습니다.
of the music. But if you follow that maître, master of ceremony, you see he's not playing anymore. He had that first clap. And we could scroll all the way. But whoever is present, he's there, he's standing, he doesn't have any other interaction with the musicians. Still being a musician in the sense he has had a sonic intervention. Scrolling later on, still being there. Still been there. We are 7 minutes later. So his performance has been a listener performance. And it will only come back after many minutes later when there will be a clear change of scenery in the music. Now, that instrument is called the music is the Sibelius, and this is the wooden clapper that has some kind of conducting role, but not in the Western sense when you will driven the music moment to moment, but into a more structural form, but also into a different layer of communication with the musicians. When I was researching on this, if this person is not present, the musicians don't play. Nobody will play until he gives the instruction to play, and the same, he will not leave the stage until the music is over. So it is a part of it, and it has a very particular role. Now, what is happening to that person when he plays compared to the Japanese artist, the other? And that's what I'm interested on. From the Japanese tradition, it is interesting to find that also at this extreme, we have also representations. For example, Sachiko M, and a couple of other musicians who have been working onto the silent room performance, meaning the minimum, very minimalistic interventions. For example, very high sine waves and very high pitches that plays for long duration, and then they fade out, and the performance keep going into the silence. So we have in the same culture two completely opposite representation of performing with electronic instruments. Now, what I have seen in many of our practices around Europe is we tend to be somewhere in the middle, and sometimes we push it a little bit towards one end, and it becomes some form of algorithmic performance. For example, in live coding, when we talk about performing with the computer, interacting with a running software, one can go from the very little typing onto the screen code, but also to more engaged body performances with controllers and interacting with the computer at a more expansive level. So that's what I identified into that continuity. Now, so I'm doing with time, yes. Moving towards, I'm working in this contemplative performance aspect, and that has connected me to very interesting threads. Well, of course, some of the generative music, process music. How do we perform? How do we prepare for the performance? So there is a lot of pre-preparations, but as in many any musical expression that's inevitable. So pre-programming, for example, algorithms or sequencers or musical or sonic devices to have a behavior that the performer will interact with it. And but from the analysis side is where there are, of course, two connections. One is the practice of microphenomenology, and the other one is the one of meditation. And I actually found a person who has been studying that into very much detail. That is Claire Petit-Mangeon, who takes the tradition of Joseng and Mahamudra's schools of meditation, and the tradition of the l'entretien d'explication, or the interview. So you remember how the phenomenology goes. You have the lived experience, and then you have to verbalize it, and for verbalizing it and try to make it objective. So you have an interview with someone who will interact to unfold the lived experience. Now, what Claire Petit-Mignon is doing is recognizing the micro movements or the micro changes into the body of very long tradition masters of meditation. And through interviews, and she's still using interviews, identifying the practice. So there is a very interesting paper on this called On the Willing and Unwilling of Experience, a comparison between microphenomenological method and the practice of meditation. Now this goes through, I am working in the pedagogy field, as I say, but also for myself. So when we think, what do you study when you study this contemplative performance? You know? Because when we look at the other side, we can think about physicality and the body engagement and different forms of how to get to that expression. But when we talk about contemplative performance, we may have less tools, and I have based it on that research. One can identify a series of what is called in meditation veils that will take us through the process of performing while being into meditation state. So there's the attentional veil, the emotional veil, intentional veil, and I'm then developing a series of practices at the moment that could facilitate that, and such as well with teams of other researchers. Including Jan Shaher and Jin Kin-chung from South Korea, on non-verbal forms of interview for unveiling the phenomenological experience. I talk about temporal prediction error, or just to give you an example, I'm developing something that is called listening with the knee, because in meditation practice, some of the veils appear when the focus comes center into the upper part of the body. Then we develop these cognitive levels and attention levels. So one of the strategies is to push the attention, or drive the attention of the mind into the lowest part of the body. So start to listening with the knee. It takes us away from the cognitive and all the preoccupations that we may have experienced as electroacoustic performers. So I want to end with an example of a very brief example of some of this practice that this is the ongoing research. So in here I am doing the research. So it's not in a concert situation. It's in a research laboratory, meaning that we have cameras and everything is recorded, and then we are making emotional scores, but also verbal interviews, and we are trying to develop the method. But I play a little bit of this so you get an idea. No, actually, I think maybe the other camera. Sorry, this is, well, 30 seconds of each angle. it there for now. There's no need for the other camera. But the point being that the affordances of electroacoustic music or instruments compared with physical acoustic instruments is that we have the energy relay, so we don't need full body engagement to get a lot of noises, a lot of sound, if you prefer. There is this possibility of memory, for example, pre-recording materials, pre-recording sequences. There is the synthesis. So what I'm identifying there is that the carefully tailored tuning controls, for example, I am using those golden touch plates that are very sensitive to the conductance of the body to interact with the system. So this is what I am at the moment, and this is what I wanted to present. There is a lot of questions and research going on, but will be happy to talk more later. I don't want to abuse the time either. So this is for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Alejandro. Do we have some questions? Maybe? Any questions? Yeah, we have two.
Thanks for the nice presentation and the nice conceptual background that you are bringing to, which is kind of similar to what I said yesterday about ecstasy, free jazz, and tradition, transgression. I was interested into listening through the body. You pointed out listening with the knees, so I would like you to develop, if possible, a little bit this aspect.
Yes, well, it has to do with this unveiling and trying to get it from the traditions of meditation. So in meditation, the traditions talks about the point of the meditation is to unveil the consciousness, to see the world to experience the world as it is. But we keep ourselves putting veils such as the attention or distractions that keep us away, the emotional feelings and the cognitive ideas. And I think in electroacoustic music we have been during a century focused a lot into the sonic qualities of the sound. And now I feel that we should move on. It feels like a candy, because the sound synthesis can do so many interesting sounds, and focusing too much into that sensuality aspect of the performance becomes a veil. That's what my working hypothesis. A veil, and then you start to get led by the emotions. Now you can also be led by the cognitive veins, and then thinking, for example, in an algorithmic patch of what I'm connecting to, or this is going. If you are thinking in a structural time frame, so I am moving now to section B, or I am now making a contrast coming back. So the idea of changing the ear to the knee is to bring the tension, to move that attention down on the body, from the mind and the ear and that level, and by pushing it down, I don't think it's completely achievable. Also, and I am also very sensitive to the sensuality of sounds, and they carry us towards. They made the bridge, but the bridge. What I'm feeling is that the sounds are just the means of. So pushing towards the knee, the tension towards the knee, it helps. It's a technique for helping to detach from those sensuality and cognitive and intellectual aspects.
Does it mean that in terms of your, in fact, improvising or creating for an audience, that the audience would be able to feel your music through the knees? Or is it just a performer attitude to produce something that might be good to listen to?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. At the moment, I am working from the performance side, and I identify that as a performer, in that listening attitude, you become as well a member of the audience. But yes, I'm not studied at all. I'm not considering at this point how it is. We know that there is all this reaction to the gesture and communication through understanding through what is going on in the music, through reading the body from the listener perspective. But at the moment, that's very fresh. For the moment, I'm studying how it is for the performer himself, and at one point we may move towards the audience. Yes.
Thank you, Alejandro. Very, very interesting. I have a question of something that I came to think of watching this Japanese noise guy in the park that relates to my own performance. Is the dissonance between the kind of fully engaged performance and the special mental state that you are in when you do that, and the interfaces of the devices that we play, like the modular that you had in front of you and the pedals that he was playing, because the interfaces, the knobs, etc., they are sort of intellectually motivated. They're based on physical acoustic sound parameters. They're not based on bodily expression. That's a different category of interfaces mostly, and that's true for most synthesizers. So are we able to interact with those interfaces? I mean, he interacted with his pedals, turning maybe an EQ on a distortion or a delay time or whatever, and judging from my own experience, that can make you pop out of that special mental state. But there's also a lot of research into different kinds of interfaces, so that are more close to maybe traditional musical instruments. So basically, my question is: are we able to train ourselves to actually be able to do these kind of intellectual alterations while keeping the special mental state, or should we try to design and find interfaces that allow for musical playing that is more on par with the mental state and sort of embodied and engaged performance?
Yes, thank you, Pan. That's a very pertinent question. Well, as I mentioned, in that instrument, in the modular synthesizer, I have a controller. I have the pressure points. That is this capacitance touching. So it is a little bit different from the knobs. I am interacting with the knobs as well, but yes, of course, the interface is crucial to the mediation between the tool and the mind, and the immediacy of it and the pertinence of it. Of course, it's on the spot, and I think it's actually more crucial at this end than at the trance side of it, because what I have not noticed in many of these performances that pushes the body on is that the tool could be anything, because the body's vibrate is in so much energy. Yeah, of course it could be drifted by the veil of what I'm doing now, or the knobs, or do I have to keep some intellectual connection to it? But in many cases, the performance developed this instead of just keep going, and for example with Masatama, he at one point the cable just explode. So the connection with the amplifier is broken, but the performance keep going, and the body is just going out. So the performance end up in the balcony with him hanging from the stairs. So I think in those cases the interface is to be transgressed, is to be dismantled, or to be overcome. But at the other end, if we still want to keep a connection, like the device that keeps us monitoring, a little bit like where maybe the place where we are going with driving a plane, where you don't have now the moment-to-moment control, but just an overall view and have the moment to interact with it. So, and I'm thinking it could be sonic, for example. Sometimes the interaction with it could be a microphone that is picking up an impulse or a clapping. It's true that developing the interfaces to achieve that should be to provide this non-interventionist aspect of the instrument.
So thank you, Alejandro, and yeah, we can continue discussing in the discussion in the coffee break, and please welcome the next presenter. Thank you.
Sure. Can I play?
Yes, you can play. Let's try to plug everything back in.
Yeah. Not sure. Sitting down, I might stand up. I hope that's okay. Let's see. There we are. All right, good morning. Thanks for sticking around. I know this is the last presentation of the conference, so I appreciate your brains must be a little bit tired, as is mine. So I hope I can make sense. Yeah, thank you so much to Mantautas, Ramunė, Vita, anyone else who's been organizing. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's been a wonderful event so far. Great to connect with some like-minded people and also learn about some practices that I didn't really know about at all. So I've met most of you, but if I haven't, my name's Moss Freed. I'm coming at this from a musical perspective, and I'm a composer, I'm a guitarist, and an improviser. And I must say, apologies, I'm going to be reading quite a lot today. That's simply because there's a lot I want to say, and if I freestyle, it's just going to take 40 minutes. So I might talk for slightly over 20, but not much. So apologies for that in advance. But today's paper is going to come out of my practice-led research, which is around composing for free improvisers, and there's a focus on large groups. So I'm specifically concerned in the ways in which different voices can interrelate. So my voice as a composer, the voices of the individual performers involved, and the voice of the ensemble as a whole. And I'm going to be looking at my large ensemble union division as a case study. So today I'll focus on two main areas. Firstly, oh dear, that picture's in the way, isn't it? Sorry. Firstly, the emergence of an ensemble microtradition. This is speaking about union division in particular, and this microtradition gradually took on more significance over time in defining the compositional work. And it also became able to morph somewhat independently via a process of decentralization and self-organization. Secondly, I'm going to examine some of the social and organizational dynamics at play, hoping to illuminate how and why the praxis can change without conflict and via non-verbal consensus and in a large group context. So let's look at the idea of a microtradition first. The term is sometimes conflated with ideas of ensemble sound. Today I'm going to focus on it. I'm going to use it to include what Georgina Bourne has called microsocialities. So these could be particular ways of working, particular social dynamics, ways of interacting, ethical models, etc. And ensemble microtraditions can play key roles in many different kinds of music, as I'm sure you're aware. If we think about, say, fully notated music, and certain interpretative characteristics can easily become defining characteristics of a composition. And at the same time, distinct ensemble practices can give composers a much better idea of how their pieces will be performed. They can give audiences a better idea of what they're going to be listening to, and they can help an ensemble to carve out a niche. Just got this example of the Quatuor Bozzini they're known specifically for this lack of vibrato. And I spoke to the violinist there, and she was saying how she thinks that their interpretation of Jörg Frey's quartet, the way that they played it without vibrato, became a kind of defining part of that piece, as many people saw it. And these microtraditions can potentially become even more impactful in composer-led ensembles, such as Meredith Monk's vocal ensemble. In these contexts, certain ways of workshopping and certain ways of rehearsing can actually play key roles in the creation of new music. Free improvisation provides a very different contrasting model in which defined ensemble microtraditions can be both positive and negative. On one hand, being able to anticipate what the other person is going to do can be very beneficial. Long-standing relationships can create a lot of trust. On the other hand, things can start to become predictable. And this is potentially antithetical to a lot of ideas around how free improvisation should function. And AMM was my example there. And microtraditions can become even more significant possibly when combining predetermined elements with improvisation. In this context, performers are often responsible not only for interpreting musical materials from a composer, but also for generating and structuring their own musical materials, often with a critical further responsibility of working out how these two things should interrelate. And with this kind of reliance on performer aesthetic, it's no surprise that many composers choose to work with very specific performers, often as band leaders. As a band leader, they can hope to position the microtradition towards very particular ways in which the composer's materials and aesthetic preferences coalesce with the individual voices of the performers. And Sun Ra is a great example of this, I think. In his orchestra, he brings together a variety of musical and cultural influences alongside philosophies, worldviews, physical appearance, ways of thinking about composed and improvised aspects, and particular ideas around group and individual. And I would argue that this microtradition was so developed that it was able to continue even after Sun Ra died. It continued under the leadership of John Gilmore and then Marshall Allen, who still leads it. But the orchestra still feels very much like the same ensemble. It still kind of performs in the same way. I'm now going to look at my ensemble, Union Division. And just looking at this, I've got to apologize for the aesthetic of the slideshow. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway. So I'm going to look at my ensemble and a set of pieces that I developed that was they were designed specifically for free improvisers. The set of pieces is called Micromotives. So for these pieces, my aims were quite specific. I really wanted to create a set of distinct compositions. I wanted each piece within the set to be orally distinguishable from one another, and the set as a whole to be distinguishable from free improvisation orally. I also wanted these pieces to allow large groups of improvisers to play together in ways that approximated those that they were used to in small group free improvisation. So it's a very particular kind of coming together, difficult coming together of aims, I think. But my focus on performer voice meant, of course, that the choice of players was a critical compositional decision. I needed what John Zorn has described as specific kinds of musicians that have specific kinds of skills. Having said that, I tried to balance backgrounds and traditions, skill sets, aesthetics, and crucially, personalities. And early rehearsals involved a lot of experimentation and talking, through which we were able to discover more about how the system should develop. And after each rehearsal, I'd listen back, I'd listen to the discussion, listen to the performance, and work out how to proceed. Over several months, what started out as a single piece actually became this set of pieces. And alongside that, there was a system of communication that developed and involved hand signs, and players could use these to communicate directly with one another, to communicate quite specific musical information. Oh, we need to move my face out of the way, okay. And two key elements emerged here as defining characteristics of the system that allowed players to operate with these freedoms akin to those found in small group free improvisation. Firstly, improvisation was the default scenario, so this wasn't about putting improvisation into a composed framework. It was about having improvisation and then placing in compositional ideas if they were desired. But that brings me on to the second point, which was that, there we go, that there was no obligation for performers to actually use any predetermined materials or to follow the instigations of other ensemble members, and that's an important point. So these were two critical factors that were developed over time. I did not come in with these ideas from the beginning, but through working with the ensemble, we worked out that this was actually what needed to happen. And here's an example of some of the materials that I did give them. So if we look on the right, these two bits of paper, as they are, come from a single piece. So you can see we have certain interaction types, certain types of textures, certain types of intensities, and also a bunch of melodic ideas. And that's specific to one piece. They're different for every piece. On the left, you have some of the ideas of some of the structural ideas, some of the structural mechanisms, I call them, that the performers can instigate if they want to, and these apply to the system as a whole, to all the pieces. So things like bringing down the ensemble to just one player, swapping orchestration, but also, crucially, ways of communicating with specific members of the band. So talking to everybody, talking to those who are just playing, setting up a subgroup to do something. So this is some of the stuff that I gave them. But as I said, I had to approach rehearsals with a very open agenda. I didn't really know how this was going to work. And I needed to understand how players functioned in this environment, what they needed, and which aspects might curtail particular freedoms that I was trying to keep going. So my goals seemed to necessitate collaboration from the outset. And without the level of influence that the ensemble had, it would have been impossible for me to achieve my aims. Furthermore, the system itself, comprising hand signs, materials, and structures that I've shown you, formed only part of these developments, and this is the bit that I need to get to. And actually, further modes of interacting and understanding Born's microsocialities became increasingly important. The addition of these progressed the ensemble's performance practice towards a more holistic concept of microtradition, as I'm using it today. And crucially, embodying these microsocialities on a deeper level allowed players to be much bolder in both directing the band and in subverting the ideas of other people. For example, there's a mechanism, as I showed you, that might ask a certain person to be a soloist and for the rest of the band to drop out. Now, this is very problematic for me, potentially, because it can be seen as very directorial. I want you to play, everyone else to stop playing. As Palle mentioned yesterday, there's a system called conduction, and that's exactly the kind of thing that happens. You have someone at the front telling people when to play, and this actually was one of the reasons that I started this project, was because I really didn't want that kind of thing. So this particular mechanism was really problematic, and it was not in there at the beginning. But what happened is, through discussion, we worked out that if we could see this, the social aspect as being an invitation, a suggestion, rather than a direction, then actually people could be as directorial as they wanted, knowing that might not happen, and that the people could be as confrontational as they wanted, as rejecting as they wanted, without being adversarial. So these things became really critical, and it actually allowed this mechanism to come into the piece. So in this way, certain social dynamics not only became inherent aspects of the system that significantly reduced the potential for conflict, but they were critical to its success. Furthermore, these socialities can have a very significant sonic impacts in this setting. So, for example, a collective acceptance or encouragement of rejection or subversion might encourage players to play more independently of one another, which might perhaps lead to more concurrent textures, more concurrent ideas, complex textures. So as microsocialities became more important, it became increasingly difficult for all of us to separate the ensemble from the composition. And initially, most performers found it difficult to incorporate these modes of engagement and microsocialities into their performance. it was instinctive for them to refer to given materials if they had something in front of them, and it was seen as confrontational to reject the ideas of others. So it took time. It took time for players to see this as improvisation with extra enablers, or what we ended up calling free plus, rather than composition with areas for improvisation. And it was over months of rehearsal that I, and eventually we, reinforced these ideas, encouraging group discussion and shared leadership as critical elements of the practice. Interestingly, early on, although I was very heavily influenced by the group and the ideas and the needs, I ultimately was making unilateral decisions around how this should progress. But later, debates were held in a much more obviously democratic way. And some decisions were made by a majority vote, one of which went explicitly against my position. And this change was never something discussed. Rather, the way that the microtradition evolved meant that players felt instinctively empowered to instigate a vote, and that it would have felt antithetical for me to stand in the way of that, or to maintain any kind of autocratic rights had I wanted to, which I didn't, but had I wanted to. I think now it'd be good to play you a bit of this, and so you can see, I've got a video, you can see some of the ways that musicians can communicate with each other with these hand signs, but I also want you just to listen and see if you can hear coordinated materials, any sudden changes on an ensemble level. What else? That'll do. Okay, have a listen. I'm just going to skip through. So I'm going to listen to this bit and listen to this bit. Actually our first performance, and what you'll see is there's a lot of enthusiasm for the system, a lot of people trying things out, and a lot of obedience. A lot of people were following the ideas of others, but this wasn't always the case. And in fact, as the microtradition became further embedded, it became possible to observe changes within it from performance to performance. And one outing in particular sparked my my thinking about microtradition here. And in this performance, there were substantially fewer predetermined materials referred to, and a lot more time spent in the improvised situation. So much so that I began to question the system's efficacy and function, and actually thought about abandoning the project altogether. However, what became clear on listening back, and also in talking to other players and talking to audience members, was that actually even when these predetermined elements weren't used, or they weren't used much, they were still used in that performance, but just not very much. Even in that scenario, many of the kind of broader sonic characteristics of micromotives actually remained quite clearly. Indeed, even in this performance, really improvisational performance, it was still possible to hear things such as well-regulated textures and densities. And you could hear in that example how dropping down to 2 players happened quite frequently, which is pretty rare in a group of 13. We still had abrupt whole ensemble shifts. There were lower levels of what you might call conformist behaviors, so concurrent independent activities, sub-ensembles, etc. And we still managed to have an effective elision of styles and backgrounds. So to explain this, we can postulate that the system might have acted as some sort of training program. That is to say that in becoming familiar with the sound world of the system, that the players actually became able to achieve similar results through improvisation alone. Additionally, I would argue that the microsocialities that have been established as defining elements continue to play key musical roles, encouraging some of these characteristics to emerge even in a more fully improvised context. And just have a look at this waveform that I picked out from this is from the not from the performance I've just shown you, from a different performance that was very heavily improvised. And you can see here 2 moments I want to point out, which was silence. So we had here 20 seconds of silence and here 30 seconds of silence. And this was and the piece didn't stop. Now this is extremely rare in large ensemble improvisation, or any kind of improvisation. But it's important to know that these happened without any hand signs, without any direction. It happened instinctively between the group. So we still had some of these very unusual things. So the successes of micromotives, as I initially understood them, stemmed from my offsetting of heightened performer freedom against careful curation of players who valued the compositional possibilities of the system and would likely engage creatively with the predetermined elements. In this way, materials and mechanisms created by me then formed an obvious housing for my compositional voice along traditional lines, and pieces could be distinguished from another audibly through particular groupings of materials, while the set as a whole would differ from large group improvisation in its use of whole ensemble synchronicities and by avoiding common tropes. From this perspective, the use of fewer materials and more improvisation might present existential questions, as I mentioned. And furthermore, at this stage, a power shift had occurred to the extent where I found myself somewhat powerless to instigate change unilaterally had I wanted to. It could be argued that this situation constitutes an almost complete removal of my compositional voice. However, if we see these kinds of performance characteristics as being just one part of a broader ensemble practice, one that subsumes cultural understandings and microsocialities alongside aspects of ensemble sound, then my compositional voice might be seen instead to have simply morphed and partially relocated. And perhaps this is where it was all along and I just hadn't realized it. In other words, it might make more sense to view the micro-tradition as the overarching definition of the work as a whole. So I've discussed a little of how the micro-tradition is able to accommodate quite significant changes in group praxis, but it's interesting to note that such changes don't seem to be conscious or instigated, but do often seem to be coordinated between group members. So I'm now going to look at why and how these changes can occur collectively, yet without explicit direction, agreement, or perhaps even awareness, and how they can occur without verbal discussion in a large group context. So following Kurt Lewin's definitions, my democratic leadership style has clearly promoted social equality and shared decision-making at most points, an overarching laissez-faire style, also known as self-rule, has also encouraged decision-making powers to transfer to the players. And the ways in which the players have chosen to follow what I have presented is also crucial. So using the concept of followership, ensemble members can be seen to be often highly independent and either predominantly passive, active, or pragmatic participants. Some assume responsibility for the organization periodically, and some challenge the group policy and instigate conflict. And many are activists, pushing for specific courses of action, and all are working hard to serve a leader. Now, this leader could be me, an extension, the compositional materials and structures. It could be another player instigating a change using a hand sign. But it could also be the music itself in an improvised context. And with the music in charge, improvisers may instinctively want to play more sensitively, not to dominate, to transition smoothly between ideas, to work as a cohesive whole. And union division almost certainly comprises some who will favor this kind of musical followership, musical leadership in the moment, and those who will prioritize compositional or human leadership, going maybe some way to explain how the practice can shift in different contexts. And to explain, or to attempt to explain how collective shifts can occur non-verbally despite these kinds of potential differences in perspective, Ian Janis's concept of groupthink might potentially be useful. Now, the link is tentative, but some of Janis's symptoms do seem to be directly relevant, including an illusion of unanimity and resulting self-censorship. So it's important to note that, this is demonstrated by the fact that some members actually told me later that they had intuited more resistance from the group in terms of instigating change, and they had refrained from using hand signs to coordinate the group when they had actually wanted to do that on a musical level. They just felt that they had this illusion of unanimity, and they had censored themselves as a result. Another of Janis's symptoms might be there, that of moral superiority. So there is at least in some quarters, a perceived moral superiority attached to free improvisation, as demonstrated by this quote by Eddie Prevost. So I won't read this, but the main thing is, a jazz musician serving the market cannot also make art. So it's about this, even if a peripheral awareness of this kind of perspective, even if there's a peripheral awareness within the ensemble, this might encourage shifts in favor of the improvised situation. And this is likely exacerbated by bringing in more experienced free improvisers, which did actually happen in this performance that I'm talking about today. As an overarching attribute, cohesiveness is what Paul de Hart calls the crucial linchpin in groupthink. Any desire of group members to remain cohesive as a unit will inevitably mean that if some are using predetermined elements more or less, that others will feel compelled to follow suit. Similarly, if some players begin to subvert mechanisms or ignore the directions of others more, this could easily become a collective trait. And conceptualizing union division and micromotives as a group microtradition that resists, at least to some degree, changes in how the individuals involved engage with and understand it, resonates with David Borgo's analysis of the improvising ensemble as superorganism, defined by its swarm intelligence. Borgo leans on Keith Sawyer's notion of group flow, which Sawyer describes as, quote, an irreducible property of performing groups that cannot be reduced to the individual members of the group, end quote. Like superorganisms, which is a term originally used to understand complex natural systems, such as insect colonies, union division's functionality is decentralized, it's process-driven, and it's in constant flux. Borgo made the comparison with freely improvising ensembles. I am just extending this to include predetermined elements generated by a single individual, a composer band leader. So the ensemble as superorganism then is able to collectively agree on a mode of incorporating compositional components into an improvisational context via self-organization. So to summarize, whether or not we view this level of decentralization as a positive thing, when related to musical composition, and probably in this room there is more of a sense that it might be a positive thing, but I know in some circles there definitely isn't. So regardless, it might be useful in providing an alternative model to a traditionally centralized activity that requires extensive predetermination, an alternative that might help further our understanding of different types of swarm intelligence in a world that's increasingly reliant on networked thinking. Ways of working together effectively and efficiently to create something that might stem from a central idea, in this case a compositional system, but whose goals are fluid, whose end goals are fluid. Something that, in eliding many potentially contrasting objectives, can be seen to be greater than the sum of its parts. We might be able to draw further lessons from the fact that it does so non-verbally, on a large scale and without conflict. If nothing else, from an optimization point of view, the union division model demonstrates ways of making decisions on a group level while bypassing the need for explanation, discussion, and agreement. With very limited rehearsal and almost no discussion, band members understand that they can simply turn up and play, knowing that the group will organize itself effectively and intuitively with desirable results. Thank you very much for listening. Hand goes straight up.
Questions? Vale.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, you're not surprised I raised my hand because there's so much interesting overlap, and I also can, a lot of what you're saying resonate with experiences I've had with ensembles of a similar kind, usually smaller though, but still. So my first question was one that appeared in the early part of the talk. You said picking the players is crucial, of course, and Soren also talks about that. Basically, you know, it's really important. It's almost part of the composition process. But what about picking players versus composing for the players you have? Because you started talking about my ensemble, but then it sounded like the ensemble was made for this set of compositions. So it's basically a shared project. So
Yes,
it's like a composed ensemble. Is that?
It is that. Yeah. The ideas around the composition came first, and then the people were brought in to do that. But then immediately, so what happened was, you know, people started saying, "Oh, can you bring your ensemble and can you perform a different set of pieces?" And I sort of said, "Well, maybe, but no, probably not. It feels like this ensemble is." The way that we work is very specific to these set of pieces, and it just developed like that.
So is ensemble the correct word then, when it's sort of overlapping with the composition? I don't have an answer.
I don't know. Is there another word for it?
I don't know. It's a project. I don't know. But that's just an interesting thought. Then another thing that I really resonate with is this thing that you said, that even when the pre-composed material is not used so much, the pieces are still identifiable. I mean, and one of the systems that I was planning to talk about yesterday, but I didn't go into detail about it, it's called bucket system, which basically deals with sort of transitions and configurations between improvisers. And we sometimes, you know, do a set without the system also in the end or during rehearsals. Right. And yes, having played that system for a while, or you know, both just one workshop maybe and one concert with a small group, or for us who have played it, you know, several years, it changes our playing. Yeah. You can hear that, oh, that person has, this ensemble has been playing the system, because now, as you also, I think, hinted on with these hand signs, etc., transitions is the thing that's usually difficult with free improv, but this, having played the system, actually people get better at managing transitions. Then I was also thinking about when you said your role sort of diminished in a way or changed over time, and are you the composer or are you the initiator? I compare it a little bit with the entrepreneurs or an inventor who is a founder of a company, and sometimes they get kicked out and the company, you know, becomes an entity of its own. Yeah. For good or for bad. maybe bad for the inventor. But, you know, there's some parallels there, which is also interesting to contemplate. And maybe that term, I was thinking, because you said, am I the composer or not at some point? But maybe being an initiator of an organism that lives its own life is also kind of authorship.
Well, this is what we were talking about your thing yesterday, exactly the same comment that I had about your work.
So, you see there are so many parallels.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I mean, these terms are important, if only, you know, because the structures around us continue to reinforce these ideas. We need, I mean, I've applied to so many, you know, grants and funds that just come back blank. And I think part of that is because they just don't know where to put me. If I provide, they say you need to provide us with a PDF score. It's like, well, I can do that. And you can see that I do have these scores, but it only explains a tiny bit of the system and what I'm trying to do here. And actually, they just don't know how to deal with it. So, you know.
There's this cultural tradition that we need to call ourselves composers. And I find that quite problematic. Why do we need that? Is this a question of prestige? Or, I mean, the music happens anyway.
Well, I think there's probably all sorts of reasons, aren't there? I mean, you mentioned copyright yesterday, royalties. I think that's probably a big part of it, historically. But
it's problematic.
It is problematic, yeah. But I don't know what my role is at this stage. It still feels compositional, just not in the traditional way. But that's what I'm saying, is that I feel like it's been about developing this ensemble micro-tradition. That's actually been the work more than the materials. The materials are still there and important. And the structures have influenced, you know, it's all influenced, but where we've come to now is kind of a different place. Yeah.
Are you sure this is not just a psychological experiment and the whole composition is just an excuse to be studying these sort of lab rats and see how they interact?
It's ended up like that. Yeah. It has ended up like that. I've realized that I'm only reading psychology of music papers now. And I never thought I was interested in that. But it's all about the sociality.
Don't tell the musicians.
No. I did do one of these talks where they were there, because we did a performance afterwards, and I sort of missed all this bit out. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. That was really interesting, and there are a lot of parallels with that and theatre improvisation, which is what I do. So talking about how to call yourself, it just came to me as an idea, but maybe facilitator. You facilitate the space for it to happen, perhaps. So I don't know what the time period and the time frame was for this project, and if it's ongoing. Well, it is ongoing, isn't it?
It's ongoing, but kind of slowed down a lot. I need to pick it up again.
But when did it start?
The period between the kind of, I would say, it started in 2018.
Okay.
So it's been a while. But the period it took before we got, I would say, before the sort of micro-tradition felt like it was established was about 9 months.
Okay. So my question relates to what you just touched upon as well, the psychological or social aspect. So you mentioned how the ensemble, the feedback you got afterwards, and I wonder, did you systematically check in with them and see if their responses changed according to the group dynamic, and how, and I suppose their approach, their mentality, if they bonded more as an ensemble, and how all of that impacted the music at the end, and then how that impacted them as musicians, because obviously having the courage to be able to initiate a change in an ensemble, and some of them felt like they couldn't at some point, so they were self-regulating, and how that changed over time, and how that feeds into their skills as musicians, but then in a bigger picture of how that feeds into them as humans. I know that might sound...
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do, and that...
Does that make sense?
I think so.
So did you measure that along the way?
I would say not in a kind of systematic, quantitative kind of way, but yes. I have not really, and what would be fascinating is to see how any of this might have impacted them well, I don't know, on a kind of human level, I think that might be a bit much.
Personal level.
But on affecting their wider musical practice, maybe. I can kind of see how it has for some people. But I'm not sure that it's tentative. But I can kind of see how couple of people have like changed their practice. I can see, and I think maybe there's a link to that. But I don't know. We haven't really talked about it properly. But certainly, I do check in with them after each performance. Not necessarily everyone, but I will definitely have conversations with most people. I talk with the audience as well. You know, they've always got lots to say because it's quite an interesting experience for them most of the time.
Yeah, I'm certain that it will have impacted them on a much deeper level as well. You know, being in a space and being given the confidence and the permission in a setting which traditionally isn't like that.
Yeah.
Being given permission to be able to conduct or facilitate.
It's tricky because all of these people are really experienced free improvisers. So that bit's tricky because yes, I've been giving them a lot more control in what might have been a more traditionally centralized practice, but I think quite a few of them now see this as, this is just bringing it into free improv, which I know, but I can just do extra things.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how I wanted them to see it. That's how I think it functions most effectively. So I don't know if it's that kind of profound in that sense. I feel it might just kind of, for some of them at least. And I think they all have different perspectives on this. They have different experiences of what they're doing. I think for some people, yeah, probably that is right. But some of them come and I say, and they've said, we're doing Moss's improv project, you know. Like, they just think it's improv. Now, we've kind of come to that stage, but a lot of them don't see it like that. There's a real mixture. So yeah, maybe I should conduct some more kind of, but also it's been 5 years, I'm kind of ready for a new project. You know?
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess, thank you very much. So, let's have a coffee break and let's return at around 12.
I think we will rearrange a little bit the settings, and everyone is invited to take a part in the final panel discussion. And
we'll just put chairs in the circle. So I think 12 is fine. We can take a bit longer to discuss afterwards. So we'll get back in roughly 25 minutes or so. vienas, vienas. Vienas, vienas. Nu, iš čia tolokai. Galima... Labą dieną. Vienas, vienas. Soundcast. Ir iš čia girdis. Vienas, vienas. Ta prasme, galima kentėti. one should be catching everything and hopefully not feedbacking too much. Yeah, let's start. Okay, so I don't know. We have been exploring this topic of creativity and improvisation, all the conceptions as well as the meaning of these words in different contexts, cultural paradigms and disciplinary approaches. And of course, it's very clear that we have to keep on talking about this, and I think from the disciplinary perspective as well, because it was interesting for me to see what my colleagues are doing, and that's nice, again, to see some kind of framework of their thinking and working, but at the same time it was also very interesting to see and hear people who are from, let's say, neighboring performing arts fields, and how they see the same concepts and how they understand what is improvisation, what it is not, you know, what first association, second or third association comes there, how it is evaluated. So maybe we could start just having like a little circle around, and maybe everybody saying a few words. What do you actually remember, or what do you feel that you learned which was surprising or interesting for you? You know, like in all this, I don't know.
Okay, we can start like that.
We can start like that, and then see how the discussion develops, and continue with this. So
Let's
I
do
don't know.
like this.
Well, if you wouldn't mind.
What have you
Of course, it's always like a hard thing to start with.
I wasn't here when okay, so what I've learned from the last 2 days, yeah?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
what was the thing which you feel that it's valuable for you, or interesting, or shocking? I don't know.
Okay, so I come from a theatre background. So the largest interest for me here was discovering the methodology in music improvisation, which my knowledge was limited in terms of, you know, I thought it's an art form, but I didn't realize the science and the methodology behind it. So for me, that was really interesting. It was also, what I really enjoyed is seeing the parallels between it all and seeing how it's all linked and being part of a wider community. I really enjoyed Kiki's presentation as well, because it made me think about how it relates to my own practice and how it's integrated into that. I saw your performance, most of it. I had to rush off, and I thought that was incredible, and I wanted to talk to you about it as well. So what struck me was how many, it feels like this subculture world of really interesting things and research happening, and how it can be used to improve not just the creative world, but social aspects as well, which is my wider interest. How we can take art and how that makes better communities and better societies.
Okay.
That's my summary.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think for me it's basically echoing this in reverse a bit. So coming at it musically and then seeing how, for example, one of the things that struck me about Paul's presentation on the first day was seeing some of these exercises, and for me they were very strikingly musical, and thinking, okay, then suddenly how can I bring that into training that I do musically, and so seeing those parallels in theatre, like you said, and yeah, the other big thing, well, two main things. One was the getting more ideas around how to extrapolate some of the things that I've been seeing socially to a wider context that Angela's been talking about, and also thinking a bit more. It's sort of, I keep coming back to education all the time. I keep coming back to it during various speeches, various presentations, and the sort of impact of training and the impact where these skills should be or could be better used and developed.
Well, first I must say I was a little bit sad that I missed some presentations because I was also engaged in a workshop that I had to do parallel things. And I must say that doing that workshop with people from different disciplines was a great learning experience also for me, because I got a chance to try things that I've mostly done with musicians, but now with dancers and actors also, together with musicians, and that was really fun and enlightening in many different ways. I also really enjoyed hearing what other people do. It's a completely different thing, reading about it, and you hear rumors about it, and I had no idea about your work, and there were so many connecting points between what we do. So I mean, learning about people, that could have been even more performances, because it's hard to talk about things. We can show some things in videos, but some things are only, shared in practice. So, but that is of course very difficult to do. But no, it's as always super interesting to actually meet people and to extend network and learn related stuff, especially from the other genres. So it's been very fruitful for me.
Thank you. My name is Lenin Vidas, and I can speak only about today. I did like underlying of the not anticipated silence appearing in the musical performance.
So I'm sorry, but I missed part of these 3 days. So it's hard for me to just say what was the best moment. It's very good, this opportunity to rethink or to think about the improvisation versus composition. And since I had a question for you, because I couldn't ask it, maybe I will ask it further, but it's very positive. Also, the hosting is perfect. The conditions are excellent, and I agree with you. If we had a little bit more opportunity to experiment, improvise, that would have been the experience such as it was 4 years ago when I came. There were like a lot of workshops where people that wanted to do some stuff were able to go on stage and start doing it. So, but I think it's interesting. Thank you.
Okay. As I have mentioned, it has been my first conference, so I don't have anything where to compare, but I'm really, really glad that I'm here, that I have been chosen to speak here. The environment has been really, really nice, and it has been so good to hear all the presentations from different areas, and to come from Finland and hear and see what kind of things you are doing, amazing things I didn't know about, and meet people, new people, and networking with them. It has been really, really, really nice, and all the conditions are really good. I really loved also the performances that there were, and it would have been also nice to hear more about your performances, and of course we could only show the videos. But I was also, my plan was to try to come here with the pianist of mine, but it wouldn't, I don't know, would it have been even possible to come with him, but now it wasn't realistic, so it would be nice to hear others also more, these performances. But thank you. It has been a pleasure.
I was impressed by everything, what was happening here, really, and this discussion between the three of you, and then Kiki provoking some conversation, I saw it online. It was very interesting because you realize that underneath all those ideas there's two very different worldviews, and these things I'm very interested in discussing and understanding where our miscommunication lies sometimes, and I am very much into these ideas of self-organization, even though I am a total control freak myself. But yes, I loved how Moss also demonstrated this thing that, you know, this works. We don't need to show signs to each other. We actually go into quiet because we communicate as an organism. So it was really impressive to hear that in your presentation, because this idea, I know it should work, but sometimes it's really hard to let go of control and get it working in actual practice. So yes, thank you for that, and thank you for your algorithms that can be simplified into simple, you know, this dice. I never thought about it, like I always thought you need a computer, but actually it's easier than that. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a blast.
Now, I'm sorry, now it looks like we require some compliments, but it's not about that.
What if took it away for you?
Okay, let's start from the things that happen. It's quite early to start 9 o'clock in Vilnius, because it's, for me, I came from 20 degrees, and suddenly I was in a snowing city, and I was sleepy a lot until to find my balance in my body. So, no, I'm joking. I'm happy that my friend here, because this academy is for me something, it is something very important, because they opened the doors to my research some years ago. So I continue this collaboration. I've lived in this city, I experienced the school, and so it's part of my life. So I love Vilnius and I love the people here. And I have to declare that Ramunė is my one of my dearest friends, and I admire her because she started all this, and I'm very happy and proud of both of you that you organized so interesting conference to discuss about something that is a big discussion around the world about, especially in theater, because we are suffering a lot, I have to say. You, the musicians and the musicologists, you know what is music, so you have training before in conservatoires, you have all the training you need, and then you can discuss about invention or improvisation. On the opposite, we have some people, they have no clue at all, and they are coming to the theater, and they pretend that they are actors, and we are full of these celebrities, and the practitioners and the real people, the people that know the job, they feel so angry about this. And I'm speaking on the behalf of the practitioners, although I belong also to the academia. And I can understand, and I can be very polite with the people they are discussing that for theater. But sometimes, believe me, the conflict, it's not a conflict, what I did my dear. We have to see real conflicts, real fights with the people, they are practitioners, and the students that they write reports that we didn't have movement classes at all for 4 years, and we paid $40,000 per year. And we have no movement classes at all. We have only classes with the sensation of movement. You understand? We are in an incomplete chaos. So I started this discussion, and I was researching a lot, and I organized 13 symposiums around the world. And I've been working even to the Russians guy. I'm saying because there is a different culture there, and you know, in Vaganova school, and I've come come to understand that there is a big misunderstanding between I'm a dancer and I'm a choreographer and I'm an actor and you are a director, but I have to train my body. And this logical thing, let's say logical thing, and the prerequisitions in the acting is lost, and in directing is lost. Imagine that the schools that they are teaching acting on screen, the directors, they have no clue about acting. They are caring about camera, or they are caring about the lights, and they don't pay attention to the actors. Because do you know what they say? You are an actor, you can play. So we are in a mess. It's really a mess. So what I'm come to understand is that there are two different things. One, to be an actor, for me to be a performer, and I need to train my body because I don't know, art is something artificial. We have it as an inherited characteristic, but we have to make something to perform because it's the body. We forgot the biological aspect of the body. We have some limitation. You can not do everything. And even if you now considering the acting, the action in films, it's impossible for someone who has no classes at all to be part of this profession anymore because the demands are so are a lot for the actors today. So I think that the misunderstanding is that, and happened when the schools changed from conservatoire, it happened in England in '98, changed from conservatoire to academies and universities. So what happened in England at that time, and it happened in dance too, they invited people from other environments, and they had MAs, and suddenly a man who had no clue about acting, he became an acting teacher. So we have to search who are the acting teachers, who are the dancers teachers, because I experienced that when I had my BA studies in London. So suddenly, and I can say openly what happened at Central. We have a movement MA program. So do you know who are the people there? A photographer, someone who traveled a lot, someone who did some classes, ballet classes, someone who did some ballrooms, and they are together for 1 year, and after the 1 year, they get a degree, and they are going to teach movement for actors. What is this? This is outrageous. Even to our marginalized country, in Greece, there is a law in Greece. In order to teach movement classes, you have to be a dancer teacher before, a movement teacher who has qualification, to be experienced 3 times in drama, in dance schools, and then to teach at the drama academies. And so now you can understand my frustration that what is going on there? Okay, you discuss very easily at the music department, but we are in a mess, and there is a big conflict, and now the institution, the drama school stopped, the drama closed, because they faced nothingness in front of them. Suddenly, they were discussing about identity, about sexuality, about the social problems, and nothing about the acting. Where is the acting there? We are not sociological departments. We don't know about psychology, how to deal with these things. Every time we are speaking, don't touch me, don't look at me. Okay, I have to leave from the class. What is going on? There is a kind of lunatic in the institutions around the world, and the teachers are speechless, and we don't know what to say, because they can sue us. In Britain, it's impossible to teach at that time. And you can inform the people what happened in teaching in England at the moment, and not only in UK. We are at great danger. We don't know what we can do. It's a lunatic. It's a situation impossible. So what? Sorry to say that, but I'm expressing my concerns that when you are speaking about improvisation, there is a different field there, the musicology department, and And there is a completely different thing in performing studies. So, of course, you have some conflicts, but you are musicians. You know each other. You know the notes. We know nothing. You have someone who says, "I'm a mover." Okay, I'm the Jesus Christ. What is all this about? So I have 4 degrees, and so what? I will ask my money back. If Central gives diplomas, people that they have no degree at all, and they pretend that they know movement, so okay, they can give me back the 1,000 I spent for them. I spent a lot of money to study in England, hard, from 10 years old. What? Sorry, what the hell? Who I am? I don't know. I don't know if I'm a woman anymore. I don't know if I'm a teacher. I don't know if I exist with all that nihilist approaches. Who am I as a woman? Who am I studying? Where?
Yeah, but you know, I was thinking that in a way, at least in music, but that's the thing, that at least in music, actually to improvise, you have to be super good at your craft. It's impossible to improvise.
It requires dexterity.
If you don't know your instrument well, like simply put. So I don't know if there is even no notion, I believe, in the music that improvisation is something unprofessional, you know. It's quite interesting that for you, for example, as from theater field, improvisation connects more to kind of what you're talking about, more like this, I'll say lack of craft or non-professionalism, or kind of amateur approach, which is also fine. I mean, I understand what you were saying, that okay, if you're on a professional stage, you have to be professional, and that's true. But that's the thing. I mean, when I improvise, a lot of people who, for example, graduated piano and composition as I did, with electronics or without, it doesn't really matter, because it's just another instrument. So you're using computer or you're not using computer, it's just the choice of instruments in the end. You know, so the thing is that, you know, a lot of people can't really improvise if they are not provided with notes. You know, like a lot of classical education is one of the biggest problems. You can't do this musicking. You are used to just perform the instructions, and improvisation is something of next level. When you know all that, you have to kind of free yourself, and you have to have a courage and knowledge how, especially if you're improvising with others, how to communicate without score, how to communicate just with feeling and listening and really understanding what people are doing. So I would say that requires, say, additional competencies besides all the professional competencies of your field and craft. So improvisation, in music at least, it doesn't have any kind of connection to this kind of thing that anybody can do it, you know. It's vice versa, I would even say. It's like there are, if you would take all the musicians in the world, there would be probably minority who can improvise well and are even courageous enough to do that. At least I feel like this, right?
If I can add something, I would say it's more a question of person, because there is no, I mean, there are differences technically between improvisation in music and in actor, in theater. As I said yesterday, improvisation started in theater. You put yourself in an image, and you start performing what you are, or what you think you are, how you think you can express what you have to express. So what I wanted to point out is that for sure there are technical differences in improvisation, but not in terms of a good improviser. In formal music, as I explained, such as classical music up to Wagner, let's say, you had performers, it was said yesterday, that were able to have this higher technique and ability to improvise in the rules of tonality, in the rules of atonality, in the rules of serialism, post-serialism. You know, there is no limit to improvisation, but the limit was given, which was an indeterminate limit by John Cage. He said basically that everybody is musicians, which I think we are, because we are able to breathe and to understand that breathing is imprinting, expressing information that we visualize, that we conceptualize, that we are able to grasp, basically. And we have the beatings. We live with the beatings. We live with the downbeat. And even in the improvisation show that I witnessed today, you could see that in the semi-improvisation technique, everybody was moving his body to be in the model pulse, if I can say. So Cage said that there is no everybody's musician, and it's where it starts. In fact, since the 1940s, the experimental music opened the path to total possibility to free up from conditioning. Conditioning for me, it's just if you ask for a classical musician to improvise, he's going to improvise in the Mozart style, in the Bach style. He's not going to be able to escape from his mind, to free his mind to express himself with his own, he has a technique because we are able to live and foresee the space and walk by ourselves, We just have to be controlled by our parents. But in music, in theater, it's the same thing. We're all the same. There is no distinction for me. There's a distinction which is ethic, which is social, which is moral, cultural, as we say. But we're all the same. We should all be able to sing like kids, repeat, mimetism. Since 3 months in the womb of our mother, we were able to listen to sounds, so we were able to follow the flow. So music is much more into us, and for me it's not music, it's sound. It's the fact that the first sensation for a newborn, before being born, is to hear the beating of somebody else. Collective awareness might start from there. Who knows? But so it's just to answer the fact that I agree there is a distinction in improvisation between theater. You would ask me to improvise, I would be tetanized. In music, either it would be the same, but it requires a consciousness of a certain technique to improvise in the style of Mozart, in the style of Ornette Coleman, in my style, as it was shown today.
Any kind of edit style. It's just, of course, there is a technique and a sense of. But look, maybe we continue the circle and then we continue with the discussion.
Right now,
we just jumped in. What do you think about all
because
this?
I may take this into a different direction, maybe.
Yeah, very good.
But I resonate with some of the things said. I am also a latecomer. But I was following, and I actually come from another improvisation meeting in Paris. We're celebrating the 30 years of the improvisation class. Yes, so I feel like I should be careful what I say about musicians. They're saying all what I have seen. But I resonate with a couple of things, for example, the institutional concerns, and I was part of, historically, I guess, all of us, when we moved from the academies to the university, and the process of, in Central Europe, of moving towards the Bologna Convention that we are now, bachelors and masters and doctorates of a discipline, when before we had academies, local titles, and I have been a little bit skeptical from those days with the conversation, but I also got to understand the reason of it, and the reasoning behind is actually a noble one, and is to raise the musicians and the artist status in the academic level, so to have at the same level a conversation with the natural sciences and with the human sciences, instead of having this on the side artist. So the purpose of it seems to be now we have been
symbolic.
Yes, it's still quite a young process. So of course we don't know, and in many places. I don't see the problem as much as the inside as the outside. Like when we apply for funding, we are seeing through lenses of natural sciences. What are your methods? What are your what are your theories? And then that's what I resonate also with the artistic research. So we are searching the methods, and we are bringing into that arena in the conversation with the human science and with natural sciences the place that it deserves. But I think it's quite a young discipline we should nourish before damaging the process too early. Do you see what I
Yes, can I add something? Do you know how many actors actually teach in UK? They consider it to be the most one of the best in their profession. Do you know how many they teach? No one. They exclude it from the classes. They got rid of them. I mean, Ian McKellen is considered the most influential actor in the world, and they don't pay attention to him. Do you know what they said to me? There was a statue of Olivier at the entrance of the Royal Central School, because he's one of the most important, legacy of Central. So I was asking a girl, do you know who this guy is? He said, no, I don't know, maybe it's Wember, I don't know. So, and in the classes I said, I was commenting on Olivier's class, on Olivier's acting, and they said to me, no, this is an old-fashioned acting. Oh my God, I was, wow. And I said, do you know his work? Have you ever watched his film and his research? No, but his film is in 1950 something. Do you know what happened at the moment? There, it's a mess. I mean, the problem is that they created the universities, they created the academies, and they exclude actors from the academies. We don't know the practitioners, we don't serve the research with practitioners themselves. And this is a big conflict at the moment, a big conflict.
We did not exclude. So there are many great artists working at the academy. This is the fact I'm very proud of. And suddenly I have realized that I'm the only one who is not an artist in this circle. So I'm just a scholar, but also a manager of research. And I would like a little bit to elaborate the idea of this symposium and of this platform. So initially, our idea together with Mantautas and our dear colleagues and friends from Porto Academy, we had the idea to establish an informal network or platform for research, for practice as research, for publishing and exchanging of ideas and so on. So I would be really happy if this, our meeting, could be the first step towards realization and embodiment of this idea. So every one of you is invited to join this informal network and to start with your own collaborations, and probably just you can contribute with the work you have been already doing. And let's see what happens. And the other thing I wanted to stress is that, and it's connected to Alejandro and Kiki, we're talking is, that's the distinction between scholarly research and artistic research. and still we have to fight, and I believe we are not the only ones, it's everywhere, that the governments give funding mainly to scholarly research, and they expect outcomes which can be put into the monographs or other kinds of publications. So I really liked the idea by Hendrik, who has asked about the nature of knowledge, which is produced or generated by artistic research. So I believe, for instance, your mind map is a perfect result or outcome of research. And there is no need to write, you know, the conventional paper and to publish that. We can publish it like this, and then probably with some comments, I don't know. Yeah, so my idea is that we have to defend ourselves as researchers. And for instance, now in Lithuania, we finally there are some changes in the formal regulations by ministry and by research council, and they have finally launched the position of artist researcher, and we can have one at the academy. So that's by now it's under the position, and no real possibilities to get funding for that. But yeah, but it's
formalized.
Yeah, but yes, at least it's formalized, and myself, I'm taking part in those working groups, and we are fighting for that. So I believe it will happen.
Yeah, and I think that the strongest part of these kind of circles is that, you know, like we can also kind of help and support each other in this kind of work as well, because these problems we're talking about, they are important. We have different kinds of, let's say, aspects and problems in different countries and different settings, but international networks also help, you know,
Yes,
and because we can support. You wanted to add something, I think, right?
Yes,
to
may
the
I? Yes, sure. Thank you. This is a tiny little thing that I wanted to just say to you, and then I'll talk about my thing. When you said just a scholar, I think that it's because of people like you that these things happen. So I think I just wanted to make a note of that. Yes. So I just want to introduce what I'm about to say. I'm from the UK. Well, I work in the UK. I'm from Greece. The UK is a country that's systematically dismantling arts and culture. So I'm connecting with what you're saying, Kiki, with regards to the arts. And then I want to connect with what you said about the difference between music and theatre improvisation. So in a country that's systematically being dismantled, and that comes in the form of they cut funds to colleges and universities, art courses are being shut down. I don't know if you're aware of this, but dance courses are being shut down, theatre courses are being shut down in different universities and colleges in the UK. During COVID, artists, dancers and art actors were told to retrain because there was no money. So this was an advert that went out. Again, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but a public advert went out that said you can retrain and go into IT or go into computing if you're an artist. So this is the mentality, just to put it into context. This is the mentality currently in the UK with the arts and culture. And what you mentioned before about, I can't remember who said it, that everyone can be a musician. Who was it that you said?
Yeah.
Who said it? Yes, agreed. Everyone can be an artist, everyone is an artist, everyone is a creative. The difference is, however, so a few years ago, I played the kazoo. That's it. I used to play the saxophone, I used to play the violin years ago. Now I play the kazoo, which is, I find, and the melodica, which is quite funny because I play it badly. So I went into the garden with my friend and we improvised a jam. We dressed up, we put fairy lights around us, and we had fun. We were creative, we made music, and we had a laugh. Would I put it to the public and ask people to pay? No. And I think that's the difference between formal and informal training. And I hate to use the terminology professional and amateur, but this is the difference, and this is where the discourse happens. Because in the UK, at least, with theatre improvisation, in training, it's not considered
something which is of importance. They're like, oh, you do it. Or improvisation is comedy improvisation. You go to improv shows and you have a lot of people with no formal training at all, acting, improvising, and audiences pay to watch them. So that's the massive difference. You have people who have no formal training, who have improvised maybe in 3 sessions, they've gone to 3 workshops, but audiences pay to watch them. Would you pay to watch someone in an open mic? Do you know what an open mic is?
Yes.
Yeah. Do they pay for open mics here? In England, they don't pay for open mics because it's considered a place where you... Sorry?
The performers might pay.
Exactly, the performers might pay. And that's because that's understood that in order to be of a standard where you would pay to watch a musician, they have to have the skills, the experience, the knowledge, even if it's an improvised music performance. With acting improvisation, it's different. And that then conveys the message to performers and to trainers and to facilitators and practitioners that anyone can essentially go up on stage and charge a ticket, which then makes them a professional, because that's the term for professional, isn't it? To be paid for what you do. So I keep looking at you, I don't know why I keep looking at you. But that's, I just wanted to, from in my mind, that is, I suppose, the question that what we're talking, everyone can be a musician and everyone is an artist. But are we talking about on a social, emotional level, or are we talking about academic? Are we talking about professional? Which arena are we talking in?
I think that everything in a way is like I really like ecosystematic approaches, let's say, to explain these kind of things, right? There is each field or discipline, bigger or smaller, and in the end everything connects to one thing, which is called, like humanity probably, or people. Is that there are different kind of settings and values and added values or removed values, I don't know, of things you are doing, right? I mean, there are things which have research, experimental, cultural, artistic value, and this is usually where there is this so-called professional arts, right? There is another thing, there is this social value where people just having fun, spending time together, and there is also a big value in that. There is entertainment, and different kind of parts of ecosystems, they require different kind of set of skills and things like that. But the main thing is that ecosystem would be healthy. The main thing is that somebody, hopefully in the government, would see, all this from the bird's eye view, and would see that, because each part of this ecosystem, which I was talking about, it would be quite different, I believe, for each discipline and even each set of disciplines. It has to be healthy, because it's healthy when some things go from one ecosystem to another. It has to circulate, Somebody has to die off and fertilize something else, and grow, something has to grow out of it, like without experimentation, there would be no mainstream and entertainment, for example, right? And so on. I mean, one thing generates, as you said, well-being, like feeling fun, and doing something. Another thing generates money. Yet another thing generates, some other things. Yeah, Pala maybe can continue.
No, finish your thing.
No, just so what I was saying is just like it has to be healthy, and we have to like understand what kind of thing it is and what its place is, and that's basically it. And it's about tuning and making sure that the ecosystem is healthy. And I agree that actually almost everywhere in the world nowadays, the things connected to the arts and artistic ecosystem is not like very healthy, and we have also to work that it becomes healthy maybe, but it doesn't mean that that one thing contradicts another thing. They are part of the same ecosystem. It's just that it has to be somehow tuned well.
Can I just add something? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
I didn't mean to say that they contradict each other. I was just saying that is the differentiation. And I think, and again, in England, in a country which is fueled by funding, the majority of the arts, in order to happen in England, are funded by the government. And because of that, I personally think that restricts the art and the experimentation. You see performances, whether it's dance, whether it's theatre or music, in Europe, you know, so I'm more with physical theatre, things that come out of the Netherlands, Belgium, Brussels, because though that is state funded. But in the UK, there's less experimentation because of that. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
Sorry, can I add something for this? It is because they spend a lot of money in research for years. So I was experienced a lot of research in front of me, £500,000 for nothing. So I was standing like that and said, my God, so much money for nothing, for even a real research for years now. And the European Union now, they are very concerned about where is art now, what we were doing. We have some responsibilities about this. And sorry to say that in a few years, there is no money at all. We have to create enterprises and companies in order to take money. And they are asking you business plans. You have to survive. He can give you money for 2 years, but you can survive for the other 3 years alone. So this is a big discussion at the moment. So
yes. Yeah, so I have a few thoughts. I'm a little bit frustrated that we all come from academia and we all say, but our way is the only way. And that's very dangerous. We sound like a bunch of elitists here. And I say that as a person with more degrees and academic credits that should be allowed. I have full classic training. I've done too much studies in all of this, and I ended up being very experimental. But there are many ways of learning things. And there are also very many different traditions within acting, within music, within improvisation. I've worked with professionally trained Swedish actors, a young independent theatre group. They all came from the theatre school, and they started a theatre group that did a lot of improvisation. So it goes against what you said, but that was also maybe the exception that confirms the rule. It was wonderful to work with them. I worked with Japanese Noh Theatre in Kyoto and made music with them. It's a completely different tradition that wouldn't care at all about what you say, have no clue about acting or whatever. There are different traditions. So you know, we sound like guardians of this is my tradition, this is the only right one, and they think this one is old-fashioned. My God, society changes. Yes, things are old-fashioned. Look at our students now. I teach at an experimental composition master in Gothenburg. It's called the Experimental Creation and Composition. The students come from, somebody works with poetry and sound, somebody works with orchestra, somebody works with electronics, somebody works with audiovisual, modular synthesis or whatever. And we have to realize there is so much new knowledge for them to acquire. They don't have more than 24 hours per day, just like the others. They can't do as much counterpoint as I did when I studied. They can't do as much four-part harmony because they also have to learn all these new things. So yes, the long-term historical tail has to shrink. It's simple logic because there is a lot of new stuff that they learn that we don't understand because I'm an old fart, you know. They learn, people who, for example, another example, I work a lot with AI. I coded all the algorithms from scratch because I'm a programming hacker. And today, instead, they use big libraries and they do higher level. Basically, they work on a higher abstraction layer. And they learn to use ChatGPT in a creative way or Midjourney in a creative way, which is another craft that you have to learn. And the only way to learn it is to do it a lot. And they don't care about the actual coding of the neural networks. They didn't have to do that because other people done. But they actually have a higher level craft, not higher level value-wise, but higher abstraction level, that I maybe don't have because I spend time writing algorithms. So we have to be a bit respectful that things change. Some of us have been in the game for quite a while. We have to see that, yeah, they come in with other fresh insights. And there are many ways of learning these things. And all of these new crafts, or many of these new crafts, they don't have formalized ways to train yet. They are trained by these people sitting day and night and trying out things. They don't have a degree for it. They might be super skilled in things that we as professors have not yet even recognized should be part of the curriculum. Yeah. So we have to be a bit humble here, I think, and not sound like a bunch of elitists.
Sorry to say something. I have to deal with bodies, and there is a body that I have to protect.
Yeah.
So I have to have the knowledge of the body, that this body has limits. So I cannot do whatever I like to a body. In order to train a body, I have to have the knowledge.
We all work within the constraints of the human body and the human perception.
No,
yes, but there's still different traditions within this, right?
It's anatomy and physiology there. You have limitations of doing your job. You have to take care of this. You have to see how this body works today.
Nothing what I said contradicts what you say now, so you don't have to feel defended.
No, I'm not feel defending. I'm saying that I say that we have the body. We have to deal with different things. We have to train them. They have to learn, for example, classical ballet. In order to teach classical ballet or movement, different styles that the actors need in order to make the professions. I have to be a classical to know ballet. It's not an easy thing to know ballet or to teach ballet. It takes years.
But to all contemporary dancers, I happen to be married to a contemporary choreographer for 27 years. I had 2 kids who went through National Ballet School. And there was a huge problem that they only taught them ballet technique that wasn't in demand in contemporary companies. And there was a lot of the parents sounded like, oh, they need to do this ballet, but there's nobody who wants to employ them because dance has moved on. Yes, there are ballet companies, but most of contemporary dance expression uses other techniques, so they were not employable when they get out of there. So there are so many, what I'm saying, of course we have the body, and musicians have to work in relation to human perception and cognition, and that doesn't change so much. Cognition changes a little bit, but because the technology forces us to. But yes, we have to work within that constraint, but there are so many different traditions that one is not better than the other, and it's moving gradually. And we have to realize that some of the old crafts, there are respectable crafts, but they are less necessary. You don't have to learn ballet technique
for example, you
for being a contemporary dancer.
Know how to write a fugue to be a composer.
No, exactly. I can write fugues, but my students cannot write fugues. But they do other things.
Sorry to say, but my studies start from classical ballet to contemporary to every technique.
Yeah.
I did Japanese techniques. I did everything in order to reach.
It's impressive.
Yes, it's impressive because to be a dancer,
nobody can do everything. It grows and grows and grows and grows.
Yes,
and
of
you
course,
have to
but
lessen
we
the
experience different things in our schools. We experience different practices, a lot of different practices. I'm not stuck in ballet. I'm saying that we need to teach ballet to the actors for some special reason because they have to do. They have to work with historical period style.
In certain kinds of theatre that's necessary. In many other kinds of theatre it may not be necessary.
Of course, but we have to meet the demands. Okay, we have to meet the demands.
In the order, Moss and then you and then
I was feeling the same thing actually in some of the discourse, and it's not just been now. There's been a lot of talk about training and the necessity for it as a kind of foundation to be able to improvise, and I think that's true. But I think that we need to maybe rethink what we mean by training, because I think what Paolo said is right, is that there is a very real danger that we sound like guardians, and that this is a very elitist kind of way of thinking about it, and it's not open. I just had a session on decolonial thinking in academia, and they would definitely not approve of some of this discourse, and I think that's probably right. So I'm thinking I'm not going to talk about acting or dance because I don't know enough about that, but in terms of free improvised music, which I do know about, I would say that, and it's pretty obvious, I'm just going to say really obvious things, but like people who have been through the academies, and not necessarily the people I want to improvise with, and that's because they don't have those skills built into their curriculum. What I value are listening, creativity, novelty, unpredictability, confidence. These are the things that people learn and make them great improvisers, regardless, and they don't have to be able to play an instrument at all. And in fact, there are lots of players who will specifically try and make their interface different in order to get away from muscle memory, right? Muscle memory is the enemy. So you think about how Fred Frith, I don't know if anyone knows Fred Frith, he puts his guitar often on a table on his lap, you know, so that he can't play the things that you learn to play. You know, and I've done the same. You detune your guitar so that whatever you do, you're going to get different sounds. You know, it builds in unpredictability that training actually restricts in a lot of ways. So, and you mentioned Kaji yesterday. You didn't really get onto the specific. It did come up. You know, like he was looking for very particular kinds of musicians to improvise treaties. And he wants people. He sees musical training as a negative thing because you cannot actually perform these pieces.
It's important to be safe.
So I just think we need to be careful about how we think about what training is.
Yeah.
I agree. I think where I'm coming from it, whether I see the risk for me, I agree that it shouldn't be, it's not, this is my training, this is the right training, this is the wrong training, agreed in terms of creative output and the skills involved. Where I come from, as in like my back, not where I come from, country-wise, is that there's a risk. With acting improvisation, you are connecting with emotions, you're connecting with experiences, and you're bringing them to the forefront. And because you're doing it without filters, sometimes you can tap into things which you weren't expecting to tap into. And then you bring it out to the public. Someone who's not trained to know how to be aware of that or how to deal with that can create an issue to someone, not as the performer, but as the person. Yes. So I've been in situations and I've been in workshops, specifically Meisner. I don't know if you're familiar with Meisner, which taps into spontaneity, improvisation, and connection. And there have been people who have not been trained teaching it. As a consequence, it traumatized the participants of the workshop. That's where I'm coming from in terms of training, not in terms of the creative output as such, you know, but in terms of who's training and how are they training and are they equipped to train? Because when you take and I'm talking with music, well, no, I'm going to say acting. With acting, you improvise, you're in a scene, let's say we're in a scene improvising and someone throws the word, I don't know, tomato, and I improvise an argument with you, and that argument escalates, and it's because of what I'm going through. If I'm not, I need to be trained appropriately to a certain degree to be able to protect the person on stage, to protect myself, to protect the audience. So there are different things, like with method acting, with Meisner, where I think it is, the training is important because you need to be able to know if you're going to go into somewhere deep, you can come out of it again. And the same with dance. I'm going to suggest perhaps you need to know how to use your body appropriately so that you can improvise. That's where so you don't hurt yourself. That's, I think, where the training, for me, question comes into it. Not the creative output, which is what I meant before when I said to you, yes, of course, and it's amazing and beautiful. We can all dance, we can all sing, we can all create art, but it's what are we doing with it? And that's where the question
I experience 3 physical attacks. They are getting crazy during the acting classes, and they are attacked physically on me, one, and the other, it was attacked to another woman, so I was there. So I was aware of the emotions and the feelings they have, because they have no experience at all. They attack us physically. And so you have to be careful who is playing, what is playing, if he's full of emotions. So it's, and another thing is that a lot of people come to theater because they don't feel okay with themselves. So there's a great danger for us to teach acting, because sometimes they're getting really crazy, or they have only the situation. I mean, some of them have serious psychopath problems. This is the reason we have a psychologist in the institution, in in order to protect ourselves.
Sorry, and can I just add, because with, again, with theatre improvisation in exercise and activities, one emotion that people struggle with or go to as a default is anger. Now, anger, which isn't known how to control it or how to use it, can be detrimental to the whole group and to the person. Another thing is how to talk to people and how, like, you improvise a scene that could be offensive. And it has been offensive, you know, that's why they have, like, if someone is trained, they know when they go into an improv group, they say, this is what we, you know, we avoid, you know, with sexual innuendos. There's been so many sexual innuendos in theatre improvisation, so much sexism, so much sexual harassment in theatre improvisation. So I'm just reinforcing this is the notion of the training, because it puts people in a very vulnerable position. And I think, I don't know, does free improvisation music put people in this kind of vulnerable position? Because if not, that is the distinction for me in the training.
I think it is different. I think it would be possible, but it's because we're dealing essentially with abstracts. We're dealing with sound, which
because it's not.
But we're also dealing with the social context where all these aspects are important. But it's, of course, you're more vulnerable in theatre improvisation and dance improvisation. But I think these kind of basically, these are basic shared human things to be nice to each other. Don't be a douche, right? And take care of your body. Don't hurt yourself. But there are also different traditions within those. But I totally agree. I mean, when we say there are different ways of acquiring knowledge, of course, this kind of protection and be nice and don't hurt people, that goes without saying. I would say it actually can happen in musical improvisation. I mean, there are lots of nasty improvisation teachers in music too. I mean, as there are nasty people.
Or
in
for example,
any
I can give you an understandable example. If you are in a big group, free improvising, and you get somebody who has a very strong ego and wants to dominate, so wants to impose their musical material on other musicians, and whenever they probably shouldn't be playing, they keep on jumping in, and you know, like, and it's annoying, but it's of course not so traumatizing as, you know, very direct, let's say, worded comments, as in theater.
Feel very real or confident.
Physical.
I don't know if you heard my
I would like
presentation.
to have this conversation in
Some
front
of it
of the
was about
stands,
preventing
actor
that.
stands. I would love to have this conversation with the actor stands, and I would like to share the ideas, and you can explain to them how to do all these very difficult things. If you have no training at all. They've been trained for years in order to do the scenes that you are enjoying watching on TV, and they have a very strict training every day, continuously. So I had Adi Long last summer, not this summer, the summer before, in Marathon, and Lars Andersen, the archery teacher. So I have to speak in front of them about technique and what they face. And the problem is that now, at the Oscars, they exclude the people that are going, the actors that are playing in action films, because they don't believe that it's so sophisticated way of acting. So we have to see how the people work in order to do all the scenes. Because do you know, when you are watching a film, you experience for one, someone, the leader actor doing that, and then the stunt comes and do all the other job, and then for 1 second he plays the reaction. You understand what I mean? And in the meantime, the stunt do all the work. So if I would love to have this conversation in front of these people to see how the movie works. Even in the sexual scenes, they have problems. An actor said to me, Kiki, we need you because we are full of bruises because we try to do this and then don't touch and then look from the other side. So they need someone to choreograph in a way because they hurt themselves, because it's very difficult to do all this erotic, or maybe rapes or everything on stage, because we are, sorry to say, we are dealing with bastards in acting. We are not dealing with the good guys. Okay, we have to kill, we have to do a lot of action things. And now, all the films that we've been watching in Netflix, they require a lot. Horse riding, horseback archery, shooting, everything. Those abilities. So the people, they don't have work if they are giving the text and say, they are giving the text and say, okay, go to your house and find Hamlet. Where is the Hamlet? It's inside you. Okay. So I have to find the Hamlet, okay, but I have a scene with another person. It's not all 5 persons. How to improvise myself without paying attention to what the other people respond to me? It's an interaction there, so it's not so easy to be alone. Yes, I'm alone and I can improvise, but there are a lot of other people around me. So there are special
yeah, but
problems.
at least in music, the main thing in improvisation is that you are actually not alone. That actually, even if you improvise alone, then you try to provide external inputs like algorithms or randomness to have this input and make this kind of unhealthy ego, let's say, aware of what is happening around. So I think I can summarize it because we have to finish. But I think what is important, at least from what I was listening here, when we talked about elitism, and what you mentioned, this decolonization, and also what we talked also about awareness of other bodies, or awareness of other musicians, awareness of other maybe systems and training and things like that. That is actually one of the very important things which also Henrik touched in his presentation about ethics, that it's very important to feel other people, and understand other people, and the sense of empathy is extremely important for any kind of artistic creation, creativity and improvisation, because without that we cannot also make a change or impact actually in the society as well, because everything is actually about empathy, about feeling other people and also maybe suggesting something which they might also feel and think about as well. About training, it was very interesting, when I was working on this AI Baroque opera thing, somehow I ran into some theoretical texts from Middle Ages, from Renaissance, this Ars Mensurabilis, Ars Nova and things like that. I read some of this before, but I read them through this summer in a hall, and I was thinking wow, we keep on having this kind of discussions, because somebody writes a treatise about something new and somebody else is criticizing them and saying, yes, but you need all of this and that and all these Gregorian singing things which you need, and now with this new treatise you kind of circling away. But I think also what you can find now in neuroscience research, for example, that actually important thing is not to train in a particular way, but to train a particular quality. So for example, you can train a body in different ways. You can train musical hearing in different ways. It's not just classical solfege. You can train it in listening to frequencies, for example, or doing something else. But main thing is that you train. And I think the last thing, important thing, is that whatever you are doing, and that would save us from this maybe non-professionalism or whatever we are talking about, non-skill thing, also connects to your idea of, and things which come from Aristotle and episteme and things like that. To create a new knowledge, of course, you have to have knowledge. So to have a knowledge, there's so much of knowledge nowadays. You have to also empathically connect to yourself and the people around you. You have to believe in what you are doing. You have to find what you really love and make sure that you have necessary skills to do it, what you love to do. And it's your own deep responsibility also thinking about others. Like, for example, if I climb on stage and I occupy other people's, let's say, time and attention, of course I probably need to have something to say, what I believe in. Otherwise I don't climb on stage. I just don't climb on stage just to be on stage, because that's stupid to my understanding. So, yeah.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Can I have the
Yes.
last word? Yeah, there are many different aspects regarding this exciting topic, but probably for summarizing, we can stress these values as caring, self-caring, ethics and responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah, so if we have these values as a background, I think we really can celebrate the diversity of forms and approaches and different kinds of art. So, dear friends, dear colleagues, thank you so much. It was a big day for us. My dear friend and colleague Mantautas, who is one of the most creative persons I have ever known. And I really enjoy working with him, and I believe it's just the beginning. So we have all your, the contacts of all of you. So if you don't mind, we involve your names into the list of the members of this new informal network in order just to keep you informed and
it will be the name Impact. You continue under that.
Yes.
Probably. I mean, unless you have some other suggestions.
No, because I think that it's great idea, because as you know, I did the makings of the actor and I'm concentrating on certain thing there. It will be great idea, I mean, that discussion around creativity, because it contains everything there. So Impact, I love also your logo and all this. So I think that it will be lovely to continue this and bringing also from other disciplines, from painting, from sculpture, from other disciplines, people to discuss about creativity. And
yeah, so we have the basis, the platform, and it's up to us how we will develop.
Yeah, and we also promise that we will keep on seeing for some possibilities for funding, and maybe that could also develop into some kind of published something from time to time, you know, or keep on trying to have a conferences or maybe meetings. And if some of you would imagine that you would like to co-host a conference, not necessarily only in Vilnius, we can also think about that.
Yes.
Workshops. I really liked that approach, that it would be nice if, for example, but many of you suggested also having some practical, so that, for example, you have a talk, but also you have a like performance before the talk, and you have the research part, but you have also the artistic part of the same person. Of course, it increases the budget, but maybe, you know, maybe we will find a way. Yeah.
Two things. One, are all the presentations going to be made available for us to go back to?
Well, everything was streamed, and there is like in the web page, there is like a live, and there is like 3 days, the streams of all 3 live days on YouTube.
Great, and I can access, And
yes.
the second thing is that this just came to me, and feel free to say no, but can I just do a very, very quick game with you?
Sure.
Very quick game.
Sure. If everybody agrees.
It's not, it's, yeah. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Sure. Can we stand up? Yes. Circle. You may know it. Have you eaten fortune cookies? You know fortune cookies, you know they have like a little paper inside them that gives like a blessing, or it gives like a phrase or something that you carry with you and you see into it. So we're going to create our own one, if that's okay, 1 word at a time. So I'm going to start and we'll go around. Do you want to join in? So we'll go around this way, 1 word at a time, but it has to make, like, listen to each other, and you'll have the last word.
Okay.
And then at the end we all go wise, wise, wise. And this is going to be what we take, like, with us, whatever. So, there
is many of
snow.
In
Vilnius.
being.
Sorry, which?
Being.
being.
Being. Where?
Creative.
Improvisation.
Wise, wise, wise,
Wise, wise,
wise. Thank you. I just wanted to do a little closing game.
Yes, thank you for that.
could we have a picture?
Yes.
Does anyone remember the whole sentence?
There is snow.
There is
Many
many of snow.
of
There is many
snow
of snow
in Vilnius. Where?
Being. Where.
Creative.
Creative.
improvisation.
Let's write it down.
Grammarly.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think. Yeah. But there's different traditions.
Okay, let's have a picture
So
together.
it's quite.
Unfortunately, we did not have a professional photographer for today. It
No,
was
it's
only
okay.
yesterday.
Yes, yes.